It was a special day. On Sunday, May 4th, 2003, Melissa, Katie's brother, returned home from a graduation party and found his mother in tears. The tragic events had occurred the day before, May 3rd. Melissa Katie Autry was found around 4 a.m. when the fire alarm in her dormitory went off. Her condition was critical. The girl was alone in her room, badly burned and barely alive. This is the story of Katie Autry's tragic fate. Let's try to understand what really happened to her. Melissa Kathy Autry was born on May 10, 1984, in the state of Kentucky. Her childhood was unstable as her mother suffered from mental illness. As a result, Katie and her sister were placed in foster care. The girl was a good student, characterized by a petite figure and blonde hair. Preparing for college, Katie decided to choose Western Kentucky University to stay close to her foster parents and her biological family. Taking classes in the fall of 2002, she quickly blended into college life and enjoyed her newfound independence. Katie found a good friend who became her roommate. They often spent time together at parties, enjoyed drinking and partying on campus. Her active lifestyle led to the emergence of a not very pleasant nickname, the whore from the second floor. Katie began a romantic relationship with a young man named Morris. However, he had a girlfriend out of town and did not want a serious relationship with Kathy. During her freshman year of college, Katie decided to free herself from the care of her foster parents in Kentucky, seeking complete independence. This decision left her without financial support for her education and forced her to find the means to live on her own. Katie began working various part-time jobs, even accepting a job as a dancer. On Saturday, May 3, 2003, Katie and her roommate planned to attend a party. The girls had consumed quite a bit of alcohol prior to attending the event, and as a result, Katie was already drunk. She had a habit of crying and being dramatic when she was under the influence of alcohol, so her roommate often had to attend to her. At a party, Katie spotted Morris and asked him to dance, but he declined. She became upset with his behavior and started a conflict with Morris. Katie became aggressive, and fraternity officials asked her to leave the event. One of the fraternity pledges of this party was meant to drive people home, and it was naturally assumed that Katie would be driven as well. Her roommate was having fun and didn't want to leave. She promised to call Katie later. She also thanked the driver for taking Katie home. At 2:30 a.m., shortly after Katie left this party, her roommate called to check and make sure the girl was okay. Katie answered the phone and said she was in bed. She then told her roommate that there was a guy in her room and she was scared. She reported that she did not know who the guy was. The unknown male called the roommate himself and told her that he was the one who brought Katie home. He reported that he wanted to make sure the girl got to her room because she was very drunk, and assured Katie's friend that everything was fine. Before hanging up on Katie's roommate, let's call her Sarah, thought she heard a second male voice in the room. However, she wasn't too concerned and told Katie that she would see her in the morning. About an hour and a half later, the fire alarm went off. This was not unusual in a college dormitory and was often the result of someone burning popcorn. Students came out of the building, some half asleep and some still drunk. They assumed it was another false alarm until firefighters carried out a badly burned body. Rescuers entered the dorm room and quickly located the source of the fire. Upon entering the room, a firefighter said Springler had already put out the fire, but he saw something shiny on the bed. He didn't realize it was a person until he saw the chest rise. On the bed lay a badly battered and burned Katie Autry. Her face was wrapped in a shirt and another piece of cloth was wrapped around the fire sensors. It was clear that something terrible had happened to Katie. She was, in fact, the source of the fire. As she was being carried out of the building, she told the firefighters, "Take me home." Katie had severe burns to her breasts and genital area. A can of hairspray was found, which appeared to have been used as an accelerant. An alcohol gel was also placed in Katie, presumably to remove any evidence of sexual assault. She was transferred to Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, in critical condition. Doctors explained that Katie's burns were so severe that they had probably destroyed most of her nerve endings. And this was something of a lifesaver, as it would greatly reduce her pain. Despite exceptional care, Kathy was unable to survive her injuries and passed away a few days later, on May 7, 2003. The police tried to find out why her roommate Sarah, with whom she had always been close, was not home that night. Sarah explained that she was with another friend that night, but told authorities about an ominous phone conversation between her, Kathy, and an unknown man, because the man said he was the one who brought her home, and they needed to see a designated driver. In the case of Katie Autry's death, the investigation has been struggling. Her death was mysterious, and her friends and acquaintances had little to say about her. She was a popular girl, but she didn't have many close friends, and those who did were either uninterested in her death or too fearful to tell the truth. The police started with the driver, who gave Katie a ride home after the party. He claimed that nothing happened between them, but his testimony was contradictory. He stated that he was in the car with his friend Stephen Souls, who was drunk and passed out in the back seat. According to the driver, Katie teased Stephen for being sick, calling him sick boy. When they pulled up to the dormitory, Katie got out of the car and Stephen followed her. However, the investigation revealed that Stephen was known in his community as a liar and a thief. He did not attend university or work anywhere. His life was devoted to idleness and the company of other misfits. Stephen, when questioned, began by denying his involvement with Katie after the party. He claimed that Kathy got out of the car and he went home, but later, under pressure, he admitted that he followed her to the dormitory and they made love. Stephen changed his testimony a lot, but finally admitted that Lucas Goodrum, Stephen's childhood friend, showed up in Katie's room and assaulted her. According to Stephen, Katie fought back but was unable to handle Lucas, who was much larger than she was. He then saw Lucas begin to kill Katie and set her on fire. Lucas Goodrum was at the age of 21. He was previously married but divorced and has a young son. Lucas's ex-wife claimed that he was constantly abusive and hurtful to her. The diary of events began the day Katie Autry's body was discovered in her room in the university's women's dormitory. The investigation soon established a number of key facts and suspects. That same day, after the discovery of Katie Autry's body, police began questioning anyone who might have been connected to the case. The first suspect was her ex-boyfriend, Morris. However, he had an ironclad alibi. The next suspect was the cab driver who gave Katie a ride home after the party. During questioning, it emerged that there was another person in the car, Stephen Souls, a friend of the driver who was also at the party. Stephen claimed he was drunk and didn't remember anything about what happened to Katie after she got out of the car. Police decided to widen the suspect pool and turned their attention to Lucas Goodrum, a friend of Stephen Souls. He was recently seen in a fight with his ex-girlfriend, for which he was even arrested. Turns out Lucas had a complicated personal life. He was already married but divorced and had a young son. Lucas's ex-wife told the police that he beat her regularly. During further investigation, police found Stephen Souls' DNA at the scene. Stephen initially denied involvement in the murder, but later admitted to attacking Katie on the orders of Lucas, who had threatened him. Stephen eventually agreed to make a plea bargain and confessed to all counts in exchange for the death penalty being lifted. Lucas Goodrum could not be linked to the crime because he had an alibi and his DNA was not found at the crime scene. The only connection between Stephen Souls, the jailhouse informant, and Lucas Goodrum, Stephen's friend, was that, as Stephen himself said, he claimed that Lucas confessed the crime to him while awaiting trial. However, this was not enough for the jury. Lucas Goodrum was acquitted of all charges and released. Katie's family was devastated and certain that Lucas had gotten away with his crime. Stephen Souls, on the other hand, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is still serving his sentence at the Kentucky Department of Corrections. He is now approximately 40 years old. A few years after Lucas's trial, he was charged with domestic violence against his ex-wife. He moved to Texas and disappeared from public view. His current whereabouts have not been revealed to me. While many believe Lucas is guilty, there is not enough evidence to prove it. Some details of the case remain unclear. For example, Stephen claimed to have stalked Katie before the door closed behind her. But how could Lucas have gained access to the building later? Why wasn't his DNA found on Katie? Why did Lucas have a 100% alibi? His parents' alibi may have proven unreliable, but still, Stephen Soules was in big trouble and wanted to point the finger at someone else for his heinous crime. Or Lucas is guilty after all, and really was in that dormitory. I realize his parents' alibi may not be reliable, but many factors led to Stephen Soules being in big trouble and wanting to point the finger at someone else for his heinous crime. Perhaps Lucas is guilty after all, and was indeed in that dormitory. What do you think, friends? Even if he was involved in this crime, unfortunately, the investigation was unable to gather evidence to prove it, and that's sad. Some believe Lucas was privileged because he could afford a better lawyer than his alleged accomplice. Regardless of opinions on the outcome of this case, one thing is certain: the students and faculty of this university have been forever changed. Security protocols have been altered as a result of this horrific crime. Katie will never be forgotten by those who loved her and people who never even knew her. Katie Autry's story is a tragic illustration of how easily righteousness can be compromised and the guilty go unpunished. Katie Autry's story reminds us that even in a seemingly safe society, there are real threats to our safety and well-being. We must always remain vigilant and not mindlessly trust the words of people. It is important to fight for justice so that tragedies like this do not happen again.